We'll get to the incoming police commissioner in a moment or two. But before that, yesterday I mentioned I'd received information about an ex New South Wales Police acting sergeant who faced a number of serious charges in Sydney Downing Centre District Court last Friday. Before broadcasting the matter, I wanted to make sure we were clear of any suppression orders, and that's now been conveyed to me that we are. 54-year-old Robert John Wotton faced court for the verdict to 12 charges of child sexual assault on 3 minors. I can reveal that in a judge-only trial, he's been found guilty. Found guilty of 7 counts of child sexual abuse. Now, in relation to the matters that he's been convicted on, we're talking about very serious charges indeed. Very serious charges indeed, involving, in some cases, children under the age of 10. It's beyond my belief that anyone can behave in a manner that's been typified by this pedophile. And that's what he is, and thankfully he's in jail awaiting sentence at the moment. He was on bail until he was put into jail by Her Honour on Friday. And I'll get to the sentencing judge in a moment or two and offer my congratulations in the judge-only trial. So, guilty on 7 counts of child sexual assault, 3 minors. I'll get the list of all of those right here in front of me now and go through them for you. The judge was Her Honour Yvonne Herbert in the District Court. The offences including the indecent assault of a person under 16, another actual offence, a person under 16, a third offence, person under 16, another offence, a person under 16, the actual offence inciting a victim under 10 to commit an indecent act, and there are again 2 more charges, actual offence, indecent assault on a victim under the age of 10, another 2 of exactly the same, another guilty verdict, actual offence, indecent assault, victim under the age of 10, and so it goes on. Now, despite overwhelming evidence of his criminality, I believe that his wife, unnamed, who knew the young children he had sexually assaulted, actually defended this grub in court. I've never been able to understand people who do such things. I never will. He's been refused bail by Her Honour Judge Yvonne Herbert, and I think he's at Silverwater waiting sentence in April. The people I've spoken to, giving me information, knew young children who'd been sexually assaulted by this grub, said that it was proven in court he threatened the children not to tell anyone or he'd hurt them and their families. To this very day, some of the children still sleep with a light on and a knife beside their bed, I'm told by close relatives. As I said, he'll face Parramatta District Court for sentencing on April 8. You see, but this is the sting in the tail with this pedophile. It's not the first time such charges have been raised against Robert John Wotton. In the 1990s, when he was a police officer, he fronted court on charges involving an 8-year-old girl on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. It went to trial. The first jury was hung. The second jury also hung despite the evidence of the 8-year-old. And things were a bit different back then to what they are now in relation to children giving evidence in court. The matter, after 2 hung juries, did not proceed. The now 54-year-old reinvented himself, got married and started to offend again against little children. Now, there's a remarkable postscript to all of this. The 8-year-old, who saw no justice for herself in the 1990s, was asked to give evidence in the most recent proceedings as an adult. This brave woman came to court, relived the horror of what happened to her at the hands of Robert John Wotton. And again, remarkably, despite that overwhelming evidence of the 3 children offended against more recently, and the offences date back quite some time, and the evidence of this brave woman, his wife again stood by him. Another member of the family, despite overwhelming evidence against him, this vile creature, and a guilty verdict, stands by him still. We'll have someone in court on April 8. I hope he's incarcerated for a long time. I hope it's a living hell for him for what he's done to these children. When a relative of the victims fronted him last Friday in court, on his way to court because he was on bail, he said, "What have you got to say to the families and these children?" He looked round and said, "F them. F them." Those children can hold their heads high as survivors. And even though his victim from the 1990s never saw justice, she too can hold her head high for being part of the narrative that sees this low-life grub in jail, hopefully where he'll rot. She's a brave, brave woman. And I'm sure the children involved are brave, brave children. They've survived the horror of this grub. His name should never be forgotten. Robert John Wotton. I can't identify the person married to him. I think perhaps you could pity them for the stupidity and the other relative who supports him, but at the end of the day, pity's not enough. Despising people who supports pedophile is the only way that I can accommodate it. And that's what police officers and prosecutors deal with every day. And I might mention, as I go to Karen Webb, the incoming New South Wales Police Commissioner, the victims of that crime I just reported, Commissioner, are very thankful for police, not just the police more recently, but the police that tried to prosecute this bloke back in the 1990s. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ray. How are you?
Really well, thank you. So you've got a big job in front of you. You're very capable of doing it, but was there any trepidation when you were first told that you'd be the incoming commissioner?
Not at all. I think my 34 years experience across this organisation in a variety of roles has prepared me well for it. So I'll have a great team around me and 22,000 officers and staff across this state. So I think I've got, a great lot of resource available to me to work with the community.
In relation to being in Burrawa, it's where you started your life. It's a small, small town, steeped in agricultural history. How did you get to Burrawa in the first place? Did Mum and Dad just come from Burrawa?
Yes, my dad's got 5 generations of his family here, and my mum came here and found my dad, and so settled here, and I was born and bred here, and all my schooling in the one school from kindergarten to year 12 at it's one school. So it's a great little town, a very nurturing place. It's just a perfect place for an upbringing for a family.
And as a young woman, what propelled you towards the police force?
Well, there's a bit of a story, actually, because back in those days, and it's a few years ago now, the local police officers used to do the driving tests and issue the driver's licences. And the local officer on that day, Senior Constable John Stone, now retired, was just epitomised all the values of a great police officer, and there was a recruitment pamphlet on the counter, and at that moment I thought, that's what I want to do, and so that's where it all began.
Did you pass the driving test?
I did. He said, I've seen you driving around town, so... Yes, quite a few years ago now. And
well,
he's
I'm glad
actually going to be here today, so I'm really looking forward
Well, John's going to be there?
Yes, he is. So
isn't that lovely?
Great. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. All the
very,
values
very
that,
nice.
A country police officer or any police officer should have. And he's retired and enjoying retirement, but a lovely gentleman.
Fantastic. As you look into what the future holds for you, I mean, you've said a few things once it was confirmed you would be the police commissioner, and obviously a woman's perspective is the most important one, particularly in a senior position like this, and we now have 2 female police commissioners, one in Queensland, one in New South Wales. I have a great relationship with Katarina Carroll, who I think does a good job. But what would your focus be on? I mean, it's a very broad brush, I know, but are there things that you want to change within the police force as the commissioner?
Well, I think that to your earlier story, I've said very early, and I think it's important that we really focus on victims of crime, in particular those areas of child abuse and sexual assault and domestic violence where victims need a voice and they need the support of police to come forward and hold offenders to account. So that's going to be a key focus of mine. We've already been doing a lot of work and continue to do a lot of work in that area, but we can always strengthen what we do, and I really want to focus on that. So we get victims come forward and feel confident to come to police and see it through to prosecution.
See, one of the things, having dealt with these matters like the one I just spoke about, the praise that's heaped on the Child Abuse and Sexual Crimes Unit is quite incredible. I mean, I know it's a job and I know it's a very important job, but I always get the human face. I get the support that the victims get in court, that the family of victims get in court, particularly in these cases I'm dealing with at the moment with pedophilia. And the empathy is quite outstanding. And we're talking about relatively young people. We're talking about young people who are seasoned investigators but having to deal with this on a daily basis. And sometimes I just don't know where they find the strength.
Oh, it's actually my background many years ago in child abuse investigations, and it's important just to see that we're there to play a role to support the victims and see justice done. So that's actually a motivating factor, as hard as it is to hear those stories over and over again. But we need to be that person that can support the victim and see them through court.
You see, the story I spoke about, this bloke who's being sentenced on the 8th of April, this Wotton bloke, I've spoken to family members this morning who told me this wonderful story, and it's a tragic story about an 8-year-old offended against by the same bloke in the 1990s, 2 hung juries, and when first approached, the person, now an adult, said, I've been through it that many times, I don't know whether I've got the strength to do it again. Then out of the blue, she phones the prosecutors and said, look, I don't want any more children to suffer like I did, so I'll come and I'll give the evidence, and she did. And it was a telling factor, I'm sure, that someone who was offended against but got no justice can come back and give evidence that eventually sees a pedophile found guilty. And there was no coercion. It was just someone wanting to do the right thing because she didn't want children to be in the same position she was 30 years ago where she didn't get justice.
That's right. Amazing strength. And thankfully, victims do find amazing strength and do want to see justice done. And often it is a story that I used to hear, and I'm sure, police still hear, that they don't want to see other people be victims. And whatever the motivation for people to come forward, we're there to support them.
The other thing I'd say to you, Commissioner, is one of the things that amazes me, and we've got matters before a court at the moment, a dreadful murder yesterday at North Parramatta and other matters, and, other matters more recently in relation to the death of a child. The absolute professionalism of your officers, Denny Doherty in the homicide squad, for example, forensically going through things to put a brief of evidence together before someone's charged. It's just unbelievable, I think, for the general public to have an understanding of what your officers must do and do basically 24/7 when on a hunt for a murderer, for instance.
I'm very proud of all the police officers, and certainly there are officers dedicated in homicide and other various specialist areas that work 24/7, as you said, around the clock, no stone unturned to make sure that every piece of evidence that's available to put before the court is put before the brief. So they're amazing. I've got utmost respect for all of the officers, in particular those jobs where they're confronted with awful scenes and horrific things that have happened, but it actually motivates them more to make sure that they understand what's gone wrong and happened and bring offenders to justice.
Now, given that John Stone, that officer that gave you a licence all those years ago and a pamphlet about joining the police force is going to be there, will the Webb family be out in force in Burrawa?
Yeah, there's a lot of family and friends here in the park today. And a lot of officers and old friends from many years ago, familiar faces. It's just lovely to have this day. It's special to me and special for the organisation to be just surrounded by friends and family.
I bet there are people there in Burrawa that have known you all their lives are saying, well, we knew she was pretty good, but here she is back being sworn as Commissioner. Quite incredible.
Yeah, and it was important to me that I came back here. This is where it all started, and I feel a real sense of connection to this town, so it was important I came back here.
All right, congratulations on your appointment. We'll be having plenty of discussions, I guess, in the foreseeable future, and I just better check with you. It's 35 in Western Sydney today. What's it like in Burrawa?
It's 20-odd degrees and quite humid, actually, but it's lovely so far, so it's a perfect day.
Commissioner, congratulations and thanks for talking to me. I do greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray. Take care.
All the best. Incoming New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb.